morning, good evening, good afternoon. New Heather coming to you live from my dining room / workspace. I have tips, tricks, tools, and tactics for how you could possibly blow up your pretty on the outside life. I did this, and what does that mean? I was with somebody from 1999 until 2019. And what I realized in the course of a relationship and what the court calls a long-term marriage, I realized now that from day one that I was not seen for who I am. I was a thing. I was subjugated. How did I become subjugated? I started out subjugated and not knowing it. But then I actually stayed down on the mat as time went by, because when you're with somebody who may be on a spectrum, I will be speaking about covert narcissism, which I call farcissism, because it is so far from reality and so far from normal that it becomes a new normal. And as you unpack things, if you have some heavy lifting to do and some moving around in your own life, what you're going to find is that you might have been willing to become subjugated. You might have backed down, you might have apologized first. Things might have been pretty weird, but you didn't actually know how weird until they got weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. And then suddenly it's 20 years later and you're saying to yourself, oh my God. And then the switch is flipped and the internal compass in you that didn't seem to work, it is working. And maybe sometimes you don't even know where you're going, even if you do have the compass. So the purpose of my channel is to teach you to look up at the stars. You're going to guide yourself using the stars. You are going to find your way out. And how are you going to do it? By using what you got. And what does that mean? It means you use what you got. So if you got some stars and you have some wisdom in your body and in your soul, brain, heart, I call it brain, heart, and booty coherence, but my friend Greg Braden over there, look up Greg, double G, Braden, B-R-A-D-E-N. He does really cool stuff talking about divinity within you, getting dominion, understanding what your power is, using your power. And he creates knowledge based on other knowledge. And in our quest to find meaning and make meaning, he goes back to humanity and what it means to be a thinking, feeling being. And that's what I love about Greg, because he's a scientist, he's a humanist, he's a theologian. He draws on his Native American heritage, and he has infinite wisdom that he channels via media like YouTube and Gaia and shows and doing live events. I haven't been to his live events, but he's been live in my living room at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, or when I'm tuning in when I really want to tune in. And half the time when you wake up at 3 a.m. and you can't sleep, it's because you're tuning in because you need to tune in. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Anyhow, heart, brain, that combined with a little booty coherence will get you out the door. It will help you blow up your pretty on the outside life. And what I want to say is that when I say use what you got, it's actually all inside of you, and becoming your own conduit for change, the conductor. You actually can use all of the things, and it is all inside you. And what is my purpose here? I want to share my story, and I want to tell you stuff that maybe you can't find in a manual, and maybe you can't find when you pay for the 50-minute hour. But I will tell you that many of the things that you think you've lost in a relationship where you are devastated, demeaned, devalued, actually you've gained. You've gained a lot. You know what you're not. You know who you are, and you finally know who you were with, and you finally know that unfortunately you became subjugated. You became subjugated by fear, and you became subjugated by the belief that you had to stay quiet, that you had to do this, that you had to do that, and that love meant pain. Well, I'm here to tell you that subjugation and pain and being demeaned are not love, and that the love that you have for yourself and the love that is within you, it was always there, it will always be there. And when you start really using it for yourself, to heal yourself, it does spread outward, and your field of influence beyond just your own body is huge. So in talking to you about what I know and what I've been through and what is real for me, I'm hoping that I can help other people understand that sometimes you're in a situation where you have a pretty on the outside life, and sometimes it's super pretty from the outside, and people tell you, I love your house is so pretty, and you wish you could say, well, it wasn't so pretty the other day, but you can't because you don't give words to it, you stuff it down. And what's real for you is real for you. And the Kim Jong in your head and the Kim Jong in your kitchen and in your bed and in the car and in the hallway, they will not give credence to your experience. Why? Because what you may come to find out, and what I call deep, dark, and nasty, is that you were never an equal partner. You're never going to be an equal partner. And not only are you not equal, but you are fun. You are fun to play with. You are fun to game. And in fact, you were subjugated. How were you subjugated? Slowly and surely. And you became subjugated, so you stayed subjugated until you didn't. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna say use what you got. And one of the things that I got is I have infinite wisdom, and I have tapped into it. A couple of the people that I love John McCain. John McCain is one of my heroes. And why is he a hero? Because he was a prisoner of war for 5 years. And I think to myself, if McCain could get by as a POW during war and get out and then serve for 43 years as a public servant, I can look to somebody like McCain and I can get a little McCaininess going. And what does that mean? It means that you understand that if you have dominion, you have everything. And in giving yourself back the permission to create meaning for yourself in your internal works, then your external framework will reflect your internal truths. And so staying in your integrity when you're leaving something that people don't know about, and something that the person that you're leaving will be really trying to put the lid on, but you've blown it up. You're blowing up the bridges. You hear my throat? Still coming into my throat chakra. You've blown up the bridges. You're blowing up communications. If you're a parent, you can't go full no contact because that doesn't work. You have to co-parent. But you're blowing up the way that they used to be able to get access to you. And you're blowing up how their communication could and would put you in a state. So you are, in fact, blowing stuff up. And when you rebuild yourself from things that were always inside you, by using what you got and also accessing other tools and fashioning tools and finding guides and leaders, you become who you always were. And so another hero, Shiro of mine is Durga, the Hindu goddess. The goddess Durga, basically, she knew which way the wind was blowing, and she actually had to use some of the tactics that were being used on her to do larger liberation for those who required assistance, like children. And it's about empowerment, and it's about understanding that sometimes if you give yourself permission to understand what you're dealing with, you do take a page from your opponent's playbook. You become evil to fight evil, like Durga, but it's for a higher purpose. And I'm not talking about going low vibe. I'm talking about understanding what is real, using actual reality to do what you have to do to achieve the objective. And what was my objective? To create a safe environment for myself, the child, and the pets. And how did I do it? I went into training. I took my own needs seriously. I did not tip off my personal Kim Jong, or who I call Kim Jong's hot cousin. Why? Because if I had, unfortunately, it would have gone all bad, and I would not have had access to a place to live or any money, for example. And my story is my story, your story is your story. But what I know to be true and what I experienced are true. I stayed in my integrity, and in the process of going through what I went through, I did have to fire my first lawyer because she was weak. I did have to hire a second lawyer, and he was strong. I did have to tap into my own awareness and also see what was going on to understand that if I stayed allied with an inefficient, ineffective, in cahoots with the other side counsel, that I was going to lose. I would lose my parental rights. I would lose access to capital. I would lose everything. And so what did I do? I became like Durga, and I went whoo, as fast and as far as I could go. Double swords. Water breaks rocks. You gotta flow, baby. That's another Heatherism. Water breaks rocks. You gotta flow. Take that. So, on the lawyer piece, as you're getting ready and as you're thinking about what you need to do, you need to understand the legal ramifications of outing a covert narc. If you have assets, if you have joint assets, or if in fact they've perhaps shifted things so at the press of a button they could empty every single account and have it go into an account you don't have access to, you might need to know that. And then you might need to not tell them you know it. And this is where the becoming evil to fight evil bit comes in. So go look up Durga and understand that guides and leaders will show up. It could be a conceptual guide. It could be a Hindu story, the story of gods and goddesses. Whatever gets you by, use what you got. So for me, Durga and Kali Ma, who Durga is actually an infinite combination of goddesses. Kali Ma, you might want to look up that story, especially if you're a mom. And then you sort of apply this stuff to you and you let it come in. And it's okay to be philosophical, and it's okay to sit in your shower and weep if you have to. But when you get out of the shower, you are going to splash some cold water on your face. And when you go out into the kitchen and your kid is in there in the rental house, you're going to say, "What would you like for dinner, honey?" You're going to give them choices, because they might not have had very much choice in the house. And they might have, in fact, grown up under a regime, and because they were so little when they came into it and they didn't actually have speaking capabilities, they're really indoctrinated. So when you blow stuff up, especially if things and violence has been directed towards them, the issue is that they need security. So if you're a mom or if you're a dad and you're really going up against something deep, dark, and nasty, I'm asking you to make sure that as you run this op, that you are willing to change the op to get safe. You are willing to call 911 if you have to. And you are willing to drive the heck away, even if you haven't gotten your plan the way you want to have your plan. I am a Capricorn. I am methodical. It is a blessing and a curse. In my case, 31 days before it was going to be go time, some stuff went down. It was quote unquote arrestable. Only I didn't think that if I had my now husband arrested, that it was going to work in my favor. Why? Because we didn't have neighbors. There were 4 exterior doors, a bulkhead that didn't really lock, and I wasn't going to be able to do what I needed to do if I didn't have any access to money at all. So it was really tough. And in the sense of what is safe and what isn't safe, I will tell you that as I was conducting the op and I was planning the op, I still didn't actually have a full sense of what safety even is or was, because I had been in the regime for so long that I was high functioning and I was programmed, and I had to consciously work to deprogram, to unprogram, to unlearn, and to feel down into my heart in such a way as I could open up all the little cupboards in there. And it turns out, and this is where Greg Braden comes in, Greg talks a lot about heart-brain coherence, and how in getting out of your rational mind and in dropping into your heart, when you get this going, it's unstoppable, and you can use your power, and it starts inside you and it moves outward. Well, one of the things I love about Greg is that he distills it down and he brings in story and he helps make meaning, and he's inspirational to me. So shout out to Greg Braden. Love you, man. Another person who I love, who helped me a lot, Melanie Tonya Evans. Melanie spelled the regular way, Tonia Evans, EVANS.com. Go to her website. She has the scope and breadth of somebody who survived narcissistic abuse in business and her life, and those were intertwined. She has lost everything and she has rebuilt everything, and now she helps people like me rebuild using things and a platform and her voice and her breadth of knowledge, her bringing it all together, and her creating a very cohesive place. It can start out with a quiz that you take to figure out what you think is real. It could be some stuff that gets sent to your inbox in your email. It could be going to her YouTube channel. It could be whatever you want it to be, but just know there's a ton of resources, and once you start looking, it's amazing what you might find. And so I say that guides and leaders will show up, and just when it seems the darkest and you're stepping out and you don't know exactly where you're going, I would like to let you know that at every turn I have been saved. And what does that mean? It means that in my darkest hour, which I had a lot of dark hours, things would happen and little miracles happen and big miracles happen. And one of the big miracles is that you finally tap into who you are enough to propel yourself up and out. And even if your brain and your heart are not quite connected to your booty as you get yourself out the door, it all connects back up. And then you might actually be able to really understand what dominion and sovereignty are. And if you can get that, some of the stuff that you see is no longer about you. And what does that do? It allows you to make infinite progress because you understand that you have infinite capacity. Word. So water can break rocks and you have to flow. Water can turn rocks into sand. And then water can take all that sand away, and then water can do whatever the hell it wants. So you just got to be the water, okay? Don't be the rock. Drive around the rock or turn that rock into sand. And what else am I going to say? Let's see. I blew it up, shining the bright light of my truth. I stayed in my integrity. It was so hard. Some of the stuff that is done is very low vibe. Some of the stuff is deep, dark, and nasty. Court can and will be used as retribution. When you file and when stuff goes on, it'll be a head scratcher. You will be in pain, and the devastation is real. So if you can understand by doing some work up front before you leave, and if you can get some of the money things figured out, it helps you a lot. every lawyer that you interview is a lawyer that the person you're going to turn into a defendant cannot hire. I had a finite amount of capital and a finite amount of access. So what I did was I worked within my town. I didn't actually know what I was doing. I did hire somebody. She turned out to be weak. She turned out to be in cahoots with the other side. And I then had to fire her and go find a much stronger litigator. And if I had not had to fire her, I probably would have lost my case. But one of the things that helped me a lot, just when I thought all bets were off, was that somebody that's from this area that I live in met a friend of mine. This somebody who had been from this area, she had to blow up her pretty on the outside life, and she moved away. And the thing is, there are no coincidences, and your guides and leaders will show up. So I was laying in bed one night, and I got a text from somebody that I've known since I was 17, who I went to college with, who I love. I'm now 59 and a half, and I'm still in contact with a small group of women who are ride or die in my life. Even if they're not like me, it doesn't matter, because they love me and they accept me. And I know that even though they might not understand what I went through, they know me, they trust me, and they know I'm real. So anyhow, one of my friends ran across this woman who had blown up her own life. Except in the process of blowing up her life, she lost her parental rights, she lost her house, she lost what she thought was her standing in the community, and she lost so much that she actually moved away. She went far away, and my friend said via text, "Call so-and-so, she's dying to talk to you." And I'm like, oh my God, she's such a nice woman. What a cool woman. I didn't know where she went. So I called her up, and she's like, "Heather, who's your lawyer?" I told her. She says, "You have to fire her immediately." Not like, "Hi, how are you? How have you been?" And the long and the short of it was that she told me her own experience and her own story. I could apply it to my own experience and my own unfolding story. And the common piece was, she hired the same lawyer that I had hired, and her person who she turned into a husband hired the same lawyer that my now husband hired. They threw the match on her before it got to court. This friend who lost her house and her kid, she was actually in the financial services industry, and she was able to present bomb-proof evidence. Only the court actually didn't take her evidence into consideration when they stripped her of her parental rights and he got to keep the house. Why? Because the match was already thrown by the legal teams, the two sides working together, but not really, but together, but not really. And they decide who's weak and who's strong. And so if you're in a very small pond, it's super incestuous at the county court level. So you have to go to a bigger pond, or you have to get your lawyer from doing some deep sea fishing. And you pull out the biggest fish you can pull. And how do you do that? You plan. I didn't know that piece, but I got it. And I got it at the very last moment when my case was in trouble. My parental rights, my reputation, my everything. And guess what? My lawyer that I hired, 44 years in when I hired him, I wouldn't want him to come over for dinner because he might be quoting case law. He kept telling me to get out of my own way during the course of the litigation, and he was super strong. We failed at 2 mediations. I knew they were gonna fail, but I did it anyway. Why? Because you have to become evil to fight evil. So actually failing in 2 mediations allowed my legal counsel to see what we were up against. And by the time we failed the second mediation, failed at it, my now husband's counsel had fired him because she could not in good faith represent him, because lawyers will be unwilling to perjure themselves in court if they want to keep lawyering. Just saying. So stay in your integrity, use what you got, know that gifts and magic and guides will show up, and know that you're not anything less than amazing. You are infinite, and once you can get some of your power back, and you get that coherence, and you're working from integrity and in your heart, and understanding that shoring up yourself and the child and creating a platform means that you are shoring up yourself and the child. And at the end of the day, if your kid is traversing 2 households, for example, shoring up your child, super important. So you're staying in your integrity allows you to lead the way a true leader would lead, and you lead yourself and you lead that child, and you stay high vibe. Why? Because if you go low vibe, you become low vibe. Your frequency goes lower, and because you're actually really in the thick of it and you're in the heat of the battle and you're just trying to like do the moves and do the this and do the that to just like make it go away. The issue is that trauma is in you and it's on you and it's all around you. So you don't want to go low vibe. I stayed in my integrity. I didn't do things. I didn't do the yucky stuff. I lawyered up, I fired, I lawyered up again. And just like when you're running an op, if you have certain things and you're using your certain things and you're doing the best you can, and you know you got your people and you know what you got to do to get to freedom, when a piece of critical equipment fails, you don't stand there looking at the critical equipment going, why did it fail? You throw it at somebody's head and then you run straight towards them with the other thing you got, okay? So you are not gonna fail. You are not gonna go low vibe. And you are not gonna go down into the pit of despair. Why? Because they want you to. So be Durga, become ultimately so capable and so powerful, because you know what your enemy is all about. You do not underestimate your enemy, and you power yourself up internally and then externally. And what does this do? It brings you to new places, new heights, new awareness, new lessons, new growth, and what doesn't kill you hurts a lot. So you're gonna deal with it and you're gonna get through it. I will tell you, I am 6 years out and I can finally say things, and I can finally see things, and I can finally understand things. But there are and there will be people who drank the purple Kool-Aid, and they actually may think, after you out your personal Kim Jong, that you are full crackers. Well, that's fine. Let them think that. It gives you more time not to worry about ever having to interface with them again, because they are off the list of people that you would consider sharing any part of you with. And if people are going to judge you, they will judge you. And you can't go by a billboard for what's really gone on, but you know what you know. And also, your infinite wisdom is within you. And at the cellular level, your job is to tap into your greatness. And how do you do it? You believe in yourself, you nourish yourself, you know that you have capacity, and you use it for good, not evil. But you can fight evil the way Durga did it. And you can fight evil the way that you have to fight evil, which is with the best litigator you can hire. And I can't say that it was easy, and I can't say that it was fun, and I can't say that my litigator wasn't also really into making money off of my case. He was. But at the end, I did prevail to the extent to which I could prevail. And how did I do it? By believing in myself, staying in my integrity, listening to myself, and cluing into the intuition that we all have. Sometimes you can hear it and it's so far off and it's so muffled that you don't know what the noise is. So I suggest you get closer to it. And how do you do that? by realizing that you've been subjugated, that you were subjugated and you subjugated yourself. And then you take responsibility, you flip the script, and instead of being a victim, you become a freedom fighter for yourself. And your mission is to get you, the kid, the pets out, to not become homeless, to not become penniless, and to understand that how it went, how ugly it went, shows you how ugly it was. And instead of being wrecked by it, you become informed by it. And then in future dealings and in everything about your framework going forward, you have more accessible information in your toolkit. So what are you going to do? You might be willing to lend your tools out, and you might know that the person who you lend your tool to is worthy of lending your tool to. So use what you got, and then fashion what you don't have. Make it, find it, borrow it, and then be willing to lend it. So here's some tools. Okay, love yourself, baby. Check out Greg Braden, check out Melanie Tonya Evans, and check yourself out, because you are amazing. All right, I hope you have an awesome day. If you like my content and you think it could help you, I'd love for you to subscribe. If there's somebody in your life who's seeming to have some stuff go on with their partner, and you might have heard a little but not a lot, and they're really keeping their mouth shut, and they have this whole lovey-dovey thing in public with their partner, send one of my videos to that friend. And just know that at every turn, when it seems like all bets are off, you have to run it like an op. All right, take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.